For Toronto, the development of DeMar Derozan and Kyle Lowry has given the Raptors a formidable 1-2 punch from the perimeter. But the key for them in this series may be Jonas Valanciunas. Toronto center averaged 10 points on 50% shooting against Brooklyn in the regular season. His size and strength in the paint will be a lot for Kevin Garnett and Mason Plumlee to handle. The Nets sacrificed size and rebounding when they went small after the Lopez injury, and it will be important for Valanciunas and Amir Johnson to make them pay for it. As much as I hate tanking, I think this is a good matchup for Brooklyn. I'm taking the Nets in 6 games.
Lowry against Williams. Now a switch. Lowry fires. Oh, he hits! Tough three from Kyle Lowry. Fans rise up here at Air Canada Centre. Lowry sizing up Williams. Lowry, the drive behind the back. Pretty fake. And the floater! Kyle Lowry comes up big once again for the Raptors.
Lowry in the lane. Doesn't get the roll. Valanciunas with a putback. But down 11, less than a minute to go. The Nets survive. They even the series. Game 7, Sunday in Toronto.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime, your monthly look back at some of the best and, of course, some of the worst moments in Toronto sports. We always have so many more worsts to pick from than the best. We are doing it's a quasi-worst. This was classic, what it was like to be, I'll tell you, before 2015, and 2015 is where it changes with, like, the Blue Jays bring about a change with, I think, every team in the city where, like, we were happy to be in the playoffs this year. It wasn't even, like, if they lose to Brooklyn, if it wasn't in 7, they didn't look like they were going to win the series, it would have been no big deal that they lost in 7 games. I think we were already like, wow, what a turnaround. I'm proud of this team. It's already been a great year.
Yeah, I think you're right about the point. I actually am reluctant to credit the Jays with this, even though it obviously, like, got big with them. But it was really like, and like, I know there's a lot of not necessarily great things to say about this in retrospect, but if you remember when Tim Lewicki came into MLSE and then like Masai showed up, TFC got Jovinko and Altidore, and they started doing like making the playoffs and doing stuff. And then obviously the 2015 Jays, it really did feel like things were swinging. Like I remember in 2015, I went to game 1 of Wizards Raptors, and that was a day where Donaldson walked off the Braves, I want to say. And it was like, oh, we're leaving a Raptors playoff game, which they lost, but like leaving a Raptors playoff game, walking by Skydome where this suddenly really good Blue Jays team and their MVP are walking off teams. And it was like there really was like a Toronto sports sea change that I would argue hasn't really gone away, except for the Maple Leafs, who are still terrible.
Yeah, no, and even that, like the Maple Leafs are terrible in a way that is a consistent playoff team. Like they weren't even on; they were the worst team in the league before this. So
yes,
I think
that's true.
I think now that we have entered into the 2020s and we are starting sort of a new cycle for a lot of these teams, or seeing the end of this cycle, it is very neat to sort of note that like 2015 to 2019 is like a better 4-year run in this stretch in this city than you're going to get in like 25 years. Like 1993 is probably the next time the city has as much to like, and the Raptors didn't even fucking exist back then. Like it really is incredible. The as much as the city sort of still wears that underdog tag and that hard luck loser tag, like the Raptors didn't miss the playoffs at any point in those 5 years. They were a 50-win team 5 years in a row. The Maple Leafs are a high 90-win team. The Blue Jays made 2 ALCS appearances and then did a whole rebuild and now have one of the best young cores in baseball. It is very interesting to see how, and of course Toronto FC, 2 different times in the MLS Cup, 3 different times, including one that didn't even really have that good of a team. Like that sort of, that TFC level of the team isn't really that good and they still have a ton of success, is really cool.
I saw a tweet today that said, and obviously there's, COVID and abbreviated seasons, but 2020 is the first year ever that the Leafs, Raptors, and Blue Jays all made the playoffs.
Incredible.
Which is crazy.
It's incredible. It helps when the Blue Jays are finally able to make the playoffs in a format.
Well, yes.
That's very, very good. Things kick off. Game 1. I remember getting a Giants. I had a Giants for game 1. I want to believe there was Olympics going on. Would that be correct? There would be
not yet. There was something going on. Pan Am Games, maybe.
Maybe.
Because it was like April, so it wouldn't be Olympics.
You're right. It wasn't the Olympics.
I think it was. No, I think it was lead up to Pan Am. Because I think Pan Am was that summer.
Interesting. Why would I care about that? Why would I have a memory about the Pan Am Games?
Also lead up to the World Cup that summer.
Maybe that's it. Anyway, 2014, a very interesting sports year. But game 1, it begins. The Brooklyn Nets are in town. The Raptors hosting game 1, and there is the debut, as you said. They had debuted Jurassic Park. This was the first year that fans were out in Maple Leaf Square watching the game during the game in a big group. And that whole festivity was kicked off by Masai Ujiri taking the mic in front of the live crowd from the in-game host and delivering a very simple message. 2 words for you. Fuck Brooklyn.
It was like, that was sort of, like, obviously we were all excited about Masai and he had made great moves and he was pretty immediately from the minute he got here, like one of the faces of the franchise. But I feel like that was the moment where Masai became like the guy in Toronto.
I can't even tell you how hyped I was for this. That's how old it was. I changed my Facebook profile picture to be Masai handing the mic off after he walked off the stage. It does set the tone sort of for what the Raptors this era becomes under Masai, where it is not just enough to have earned the 3 seed. It was about saying, not only are we a 3 seed, but you have to respect us. We are demanding that you listen to us, and a big fuck you before the game to get things fired up. It was how we felt, is the honest to God truth.
Yeah, and it was, I think, especially with, I don't know how much of this was Masai, how much this was Lewicki, how much this was in the works before Masai even got here, but this really was, this was the debut of We the North. This was the debut of Jurassic Park. This was Masai addressing the fans and literally telling the other team to go fuck themselves. It was just it felt, and also the Leafs were dog shit. And so this was really the beginning of Toronto becoming more of a basketball town and grass, everything that the Raptors during the finals run last year were held up as being such a great example of grassroots fandom and just capturing the whole city and everyone's attention and love.
And of course, the Raptors came out and lost this game handily.
Yes. Well, it's game 1 at home. What are you going to do?
Naturally, they lose 94-87. Pretty much trail the whole way. 29 points in the first quarter from Brooklyn. The Raptors never really get it back. They only win one quarter. They win the second quarter by 4, but it's never really enough. Kyle plays 44 and leads the team with 22 points. We were so young that we didn't even know that it was going to become a thing that Kyle can't play in the playoffs. But DeMar DeRozan, 3 of 13 in his first look for 23%, only 14 points, 3 turnovers. And I know we did this a lot when we did the Raptors-Cavs series, but Jonas Valanciunas, of course, 17 and 18 in his playoff debut. I'm almost sort of happy that Jonas days are over, because this would just happen every year, and there was no it just constant. The constant Jonas Hive, Valanciunas Hive, from the get-go, all over this.
We love JV. Also weird that he played big minutes, more minutes, but still never closed a game even back then.
And Grievous Vasquez, the part of the deal, 18 points and 8 assists, which is for a backup point guard to be a +8 and give you 18 and 8. Very cool. We should mention sort of what the Brooklyn Nets lineup looked like. They were a team, of course, they were new, and they had a big money owner, and they were basically trying to recreate the magic of the Boston Celtics run. So it was Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett sort of in the tail ends of their run. They had Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, Sean Livingston was their starting 5. So a lot of known names, a lot of veteran guys on big money contracts. And then the bench was where the Raptors really had the advantage. It was Allen Anderson, Andre Blatch, Marcus Thompson, Mirza Teletovic, and Mason Plumlee sort of rounding out their...
Teletovic just fucking killed us this series.
Not so much in game 1, but yes, he did sort of... he sort of sets the tone for being that guy that every year the Raptors fans go into series fearing the random... the random foreign
100%.
guy. Game 2, much better. Game 2, a 7:30 start. The Raptors win it 195 thanks to a huge fourth quarter where they outscore Brooklyn 36-29. Just feels good to have the Raptors actually win a game in the playoffs. They were, of course, in control for most of the first half and then piss it away in the third. Up 6 at the half and then down 2 going in the fourth. But they get 30 from DeMar of 9 of 21 and 14, 9, and 6 from Kyle. Another big game, 15 and 14 from Jonas. I am sure at this point I was like, Valanciunas is a guy we can rely on game in, game out. No question.
I remember having arguments with my friends saying that JV's the only guy who's going to get 20 and 10. He's the only guy who can do it. I was JV Hive from very early. Also funny, I remember thinking after this game, because DeMar went for 30, because obviously this was before the DeMar playoff narrative existed, because he never been in the playoffs, being like, oh, okay, he had a bad first game, but he's still our guy, and he's still a superstar player who's going to show up in the playoffs and do it for us. He actually had not a bad series in this one, which I find interesting, even though he kind of wilted in Game 7.
Well, you're right that he doesn't have that bad of a series, and because they were so new, the not new, but sort of new to the situation they were in, the reputations weren't there, so we aren't looking for it. So the games that aren't great don't stand out nearly as much, I think is part of what happens here. Game 3, this is really a back and forth. The Nets take that one 2-1. It is close down the stretch, but the Raptors cannot do enough to close a big gap after being down for most of the entire game. Another good one, 30 from DeMar. Lowry, in his Lowryist self, fouls out of this game. It's 15 and 4, sort of in his pre-prime, but another double-double from JV, but generally a fairly forgettable game at Barclays Center. And then an ugly one. You don't see scorelines like this again. Game 4, 87-79 final. Ugh.
Yeah, I remember this was sort of the early Dwayne Casey purpose narrative of he was tough defensive mind, can fight these scrappy games, the kind of guy the Raptors didn't have before. I will be honest though, I don't really remember this game that well.
I'll say something funny. In your notes, you sort of repeatedly say the Raptors get off to decent starts and then have a habit of pissing these things away in the third quarter. And generally, the accepted logic in a lot of circles is that the third quarter is where your coaching matters most, as your adjustments coming out of halftime would have changed things. Very interesting. The Raptors crap out a bunch of these third quarters in this.
Throughout Casey's entire tenure.
Adjustments, not really his thing.
That was their thing. Yeah.
The Raptors win Game 5 back in Toronto. One of the crazier nights in Toronto. As I will say this, your footnote to this, Rob Ford crack video confirmed to be real and published in the Globe this very same day.
Yeah, it was the same night. It was like mid-game. I remember being at the bar and like phones blowing up because the picture of him with the crack pipe had been released midway through this playoff game, and no one knew whether to focus on the Raptors or Rob Ford being a crackhead. It was a crazy day.
Lowry. They work Ross into the mix, and Ross has found his stroke. And I'm not sure either team felt like they played a great overall game, any of the games so far. Stretches of games, yes. Lowry, another three. Tonight, Toronto has played a great game.
The Raps, sort of a harbinger of doom in this series, almost took away a 26-point lead. They give up 44 points in the fourth quarter. They're up 22 with just under 12 remaining on a grievous 3, and that's when the Rob Ford news drops. The Nets go on a huge run and tie the game at 101 right after the Rob Ford news drops.
I remember.
Oh my goodness.
I have no memory of most of the fourth quarter of this game because I remember we were at the former Dogs Bollocks, I believe, and the Rob Ford thing came down, and the Raptors were up by like 24 points. So we were like, we can talk about Rob Ford and look at this on our phones. And then we looked up and the game was tied.
Unbelievable. Who else? Kyle Lowry is the one who actually saves them in this one. He scores 5 points in 2 possessions to put them up 3 with 27 seconds remaining. Lowry had 36 in this game. His first great playoff performance when they really needed it. 36 and 6. DeMar 23, 5 and 6 with 3 steals. That's sort of it from the offensive sort of contributors. Jonas had 16 and Grievous had 15, but a wild one the Raptors almost dropped. And now they are in the driver's seat, up 3-2 in a series against a veteran team, and they get smacked in Game 6. 97-83, nothing to take away from this one. Kyle not very good, 4 of 16 for 11 points, 4 turnovers, 4 steals, 4 turnovers, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. DeMar did pick it up, though. He had 28 and 6 and 4, but nobody else on the team anywhere near double figures. Just those 2, and that includes Lowry with a really rough shooting night. Everything goes right for Brooklyn, and that leads us to Game 7, which is where we are headed next. Jake, any memories of the absolute smackdown in Game 6?
I remember being really excited for it to start and then immediately being like, why am I watching this game? A very much, exactly you said, very much an early success Raptors game where they're in the driver's seat and they just come out completely flat and never even lead.
So that leads us to the big drama. Raptors versus Nets. It's a Game 7. A lot on the line as the Raptors in their miracle season looking to prove themselves against a veteran team. We'll talk about that next time on Sportsfeld Storytime.